Welcome to Code for Couples. Today we are here with Adam Davis, and Adam has been on the program before, and I asked him to come on back. So Adam, thank you so much for coming back on today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. It's an honor to be here again. I love what you do.
So those of you who haven't listened to my podcast with Adam in the past, what you don't know is that Adam's a former retired, right? Former police officer.
Well, I didn't retire.
You didn't quote unquote retire. Okay. He's a former police officer turned author. And let me tell you, and this is the reason why I brought him on specifically at this time of year, because he has authored an amazing book that I was honored and privileged to read before it went out. And when I read this stuff, it was amazing. But let me start off by this. The book is called, and if you've been following me at all, you probably know this, Bulletproof Marriage. And I was so impressed by this that I stand behind it 100% because this book is amazing. But tell us a little bit about the inspiration to write this book.
I think one of the first things is my own life challenges. And granted, most of them I created on my own. So especially when it comes to marriage. But first responders and military couples face unique challenges, unlike any other relationship in our society. I mean,
absolutely.
And it's extremely difficult at times. It's extremely taxing on a relationship. And so, Colonel Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, and I co-authored this book together. And we had some conversations before this book came out, before Bulletproof Marriage was even really an idea. And it was really around a specific need that was continuing to pop up and over and over again. So having that conversation and doing a lot of research, and then I really just looked into my own life. I just looked at my own past pains and said, what would have been a fantastic resource to have when I had all the things I had going on at the time. What would have been a resource I could have used to help strengthen or forge a resilient marriage? What would have maybe guided me away from the challenges that most of them I created on my own? And that's what we did. And so what I did was we created a few different sections, and this book is broken down into, I believe, 6 different sections. And the first is communication. And so I looked at some of the things, some of the areas, some of the places that are still, I don't call them weaknesses, I call them areas of opportunity.
Okay.
And
I like that.
So
putting a positive spin on
areas, yeah. So my wife has always said that communication is an area of opportunity. And I'm constantly working on it. And so that's sort of the inspiration for it. Now, I'm going to tell you, she was absolutely instrumental in the writing of this book, because if I were to write something in here that she didn't approve of or she didn't bless, I cannot in good faith or with a good conscience write something that I'm not practicing or that I'm at least trying to accomplish. This is one of the hardest things I have ever in my life written, because it challenged me with every word I put down.
Wow.
And it had our marriage 1,000 times better, 1,000 times better, because we are becoming intentional with each of these topics, each of these tools in here, and we're really putting into play. And now we're able to help others. And man, what a blessing to be able to help other couples who are going through this stuff. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, I'm an ordained minister, but I do believe that the principles in this book, based on the principles in God's Word, proven, tried and true principles, will absolutely rock your. That's the inspiration for it. The inspiration comes from really practical, real life challenges.
Yeah. Yes. And I love that, at the beginning of that, you said it comes with some unique challenges, and it really does. And that was the reason, that's the reason I think so many of us that are trying to impact relationships or just the first responder world are doing it, because there are some very unique challenges. And some of that, you actually do a really good job. I don't know why it's not a praise thing. Sorry about that. I was surprised, let me put it that way, at when I started reading some of these scenarios that you had in the devotional. I thought, whoa, is he at my house? Like, does he have a camera peering in? Because I have lived through that one, or I am going through that one now, or I know somebody, one of my other wives or one of our other officers that I know that have gone through that. And so it just nails it. So let me talk about what I found really awesome about this book. Absolutely. And then you can break down what you like about it and how you wrote it. So what's really cool about this devotional is that it's broken down into, like Adam said, six different kind of sections. But in that section, if you're struggling with something in particular, then you can go to that in the devotional. It's 90 days worth, which I joked when I did a Instagram post. I said, if you do this 4 times a year, you don't need me. And what I really like with this too is that there's a quick little story, and there's a quick tip. But then one thing that you do that I have never seen anybody do is you break it down into the sheepdog and into the spouse. And I thought that was so appropriate, because the couple are in law enforcement. So they can read it from both perspectives. I see women that are just as dug into the law enforcement lifestyle as men. They're both cops, and they are struggling, but they can read it from either perspective, either the sheepdog or the spouse. And one of the things I said was, hey, if you're a sheepdog and you really want to get into your wife's world or your spouse's world, read the spouse one too, because they're not just for that role. But I've never seen that broken down that way. Usually it's like husband and wife. And so I love the fact that it's sheepdog and spouse, because that can be either gender. And I loved that. The other thing that I really liked were the discussion.
It was with that.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. When I wrote that was one of the challenges that I had. It was kind of like a mental block was, there's so many different scenarios.
Yeah.
Where, I know many where both the husband and the wife, both spouses are law enforcement officers, or, they're both first responders, or they both serve in the military, or there's so many different combinations. And I started trying to map out the different combinations. I was like, this is absolutely wild. But I wanted it to be something that when they opened the book and they sat down to read it, that it would hit them in the face. If they understand the sheepdog concept, then they would understand those 2 points. And so I'm glad that you recognize that, because I was struggling with that for a little bit, but I'm glad that it come out the way it did. It's really really hitting home.
Yes. And then the other aspect of each of these, I always expect there to be a prayer with a devotional, but I like that there are discussion questions. So it brings insight for you if you're reading it, or it brings insight to the couple for them to open up and talk about what the meaning of that day's reading was. And they're so super quick. Like, there is no reason not to read this. I mean, you could do this in 5 minutes. 5 minutes to improve your marriage. Never hire me as a marriage therapist. There you go. Done. Maybe not, but close. So and one of the things that I also really liked about, let me say that again. One aspect I also liked about this book is that there are a lot of components. When I was reading it, I actually asked Adam, I cannot talk. When I was reading it, I asked Adam if he had been reading anything about John and Julie Gottman, and he said, who are they? And I said, well, that's how I do my therapy, because the activities you have in here are very, I would say research wise, they're therapeutically sound, and that wasn't your intention, but it certainly went there. So.
Well, we'll take that. I mean, if they're therapeutically sound, I will absolutely, if that'll help couples, if it'll help marriages, and I'm already hearing stories. This book doesn't, it doesn't. Whenever you're watching this, it doesn't officially release or didn't release until January the 1st, 2019, and the lives that it's already touching, just from them sitting down and going through 3 or 4 days of it, and the things that they're starting to see and become aware of and intentional with. I mean, that's really, really good, because if we can develop some clean, new, healthy habits in our marriages, everybody, when the new year rolls around, everybody, I want to work on my marriage. I want to work on my body. I want to work on my eating or my whatever.
Yes.
We want to drop bad habits, but why not start 2019 or whenever you're watching this and say, okay, I'm going to take 90 days. I spent 3 months in police academy, or you spent 3 months in basic training for the military, whatever the case was. Take 90 days and go through the daily challenge of sharpening and forging a resilient marriage. And you're not going to regret it. You're not going to regret it. But I'm so glad to hear that you think that it's therapeutically sound, because that way it's not just a bunch of fluff. I know it's good stuff.
And that's why I was reading it. What is one of your favorite sections in here?
Oh, well, I love the communication section for obvious reasons. I'm hearing a lot.
What's the obvious reason?
Because it has helped me become a better communicator with my wife. That is the number one reason. And I wrote the doggone book.
Yeah, tell me how's it changed?
It has made me become more conscious of my tone when I talk. And when I was writing this, one of the things that I taught is the timing of communication. So if I've just walked in the door after working 12 hours or 15 hours or whatever, and God knows I had on that tour of duty that day, and I walk in the door and my wife's running around and she's chasing my 3 kids and she's got supper going, or she doesn't have supper going and she's got 15,000 different things going on. If I walk in and say, start complaining, the house is dirty or this or that, first of all, I won't have any teeth. Second of all, we'll have some immediate friction. But third, a lot of times that's when the problems are dumped on each other, whether the sheepdog comes in and dumps them, or the spouse is waiting at home and dumps them and says, you didn't pay the light bill, or one of the kids is sick, or one of the kids this at school, or whatever, or just pick a problem, because there's plenty. There's a time when that needs to be addressed. When we come home, there needs to be a transition period. And I understand the reality of daily living. I get it. I get the daily grind. I get the daily dump that you've got all this stuff that you've got going on that you've dealt with during the day, regardless of your role as a first responder, military duty, things of that nature. When you come in, that needs to be that's a very critical point in your relationship, because every day a marriage is built not on a big moment, like not in the moment where you say your vows. Your marriage is built in the daily things and the very little things, like the tone of our communication or the timing that we're going to choose to talk about a major topic or something, potentially a conflict. And so that needs to really be a time where we have re-engaged as friends, as family, as lovers, and then we move from that point and then set aside a time when there's no other distractions. We've kind of cleared our minds, cleared the air, and then we can move on into whatever else is there. So, I had a bad habit of when I would come home, I would literally for the longest time on duty, I would come home and drop my duty belt, take off my vest, and sit on the couch or sit on the recliner and basically just stare at the wall or stare at the TV. I wouldn't say anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody, like just totally disengaged.
Yes.
And you know, for whatever reason. And so I think what it's removing that barrier. I talk a lot about that. I talk about withdrawing. Call it what you want to. I know there's a bunch of smart terms for it that I don't know, but withdrawing and shutting down when
withdrawing, yes.
And so yeah, that is one of the biggest reasons, because it helped me to realize what I'd done. So I've been working on that, trying to be better. My wife and I just had a conversation the other night, and I realized what I was doing at the time was not giving her 100% attention. And so we're getting better. And I want you to know something. Please, 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 please know this. I am like not the perfect husband, the perfect couple. We have is perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
I've never been happier in my life than I am right now. But I want you to understand that if you have a perspective that you something because somebody showed be that, let's have a drink. And you need to understand that is not who I am. This is written from practical applications, from real life battles, from struggles that I walked through.
Yeah.
And we're still standing. And so I think that's very important point to right here is to leave, is that you don't have to be perfect. Things aren't going to be perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to mess up, and sometimes you're going to mess up bad. But that's communication, and that's probably why it's one of my favorite sections. Communication is the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood, and if you're constantly a nag, or it's always something is a problem, and you can't say anything nice to your spouse, or if you're talking about your spouse behind their back, and if you're trashing them to your friends and family and things of that nature, man, you need to check yourself big time. And like, there's such a division in so many relationships, and why would you do that? I mean, why would you do that?
Right.
That is your spouse. You are one team. You're not fighting against each other. You're fighting for each other. You're on the same team. You're in this battle together.
Yeah.
And like, you check each other, and you cover areas of vulnerability, and you don't let anybody get into that marriage and disrupt that peace. You never, ever. You have the responsibility to protect your house, and both spouses, not just the man, not just the woman, both spouses. And so that's one of the things that I'm really driving home here.
Yeah.
Is I'm trying to raise up couples who are saying, the buck stops here, and you're not getting my marriage. You're not getting my family. I don't care what's happened, where we've been. You don't get this one. And so
that's perfect.
I hope
and
that answers your question.
Yes. Well, and you raised some really good points, and hopefully I communicate that too. Like, none of us are perfect, but what you do in allowing yourself not to have a perfect relationship is that you allow it to fall down, and you get up after the fall. And that's the resiliency that you're talking about, which is perfect. And you're right that communication is so very important, and it has to be at a good time. You have to be careful of your tone. And when you're talking about, I love that you put it in that construct of the house, because when you're talking about your spouse to somebody else, when you're inserting that negativity, I always say you're opening windows. And so what that does is that opens windows, and it allows other things to get into your marital house, which can destroy it. So, very good.
Big time.
Yes.
And one of the other things that I think is very important is too often we look for like major problems in our marriage before we start addressing problems, or we start working on our marriage.
Which is when you call me.
From a biblical, let's go back quick. I'm not going to give you a Bible lesson, but from a biblical perspective, and let's take a trip to the Garden of Eden, where God has created Adam, and he puts him into a deep sleep, and he takes a rib from him and creates Eve. Adam wakes up from his deep sleep and looks beside him, who is a woman in all of her beauty, totally naked, and says, "Whoa, man." And that's where you get the word woman from. And he said, "Whoa, man." And there she was. And I'm sorry. But the enemy, the enemy didn't come in like Ric Flair. The enemy didn't come into the Garden of Eden like with a big parade. He didn't come in hollering and screaming and making a bunch of racket. He came in very subtle with very subtle suggestions. He came in to Eve and said, "Who told you that you would die?" You know, and that, yeah, exactly. It started with subtle suggestions, and maybe that subtle suggestion is somebody that tells you how good you look. That's not your spouse, and it makes you feel really good, and then you go home and your spouse doesn't tell you how good you look because they've been with you for 22 years.
They don't appreciate
they
you.
don't appreciate you
more. Right.
And now you're going to have problems. So be careful not to let the little subtle suggestions from outside to influence your marriage. Men, I'm going to talk to men because I am a man and my job is to talk to the men. But for men, your woman should never, ever doubt your love for her. She should never doubt where she stands, and she's at the very top of the priority list. And so if you give an opportunity for the enemy to come in, if Adam would have been on his job in the Garden of Eden, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. If Adam would have been doing his job in the Garden of Eden with Eve, taking care of his woman, then things would have maybe went a little different. But we don't know. So I say that to say, protect your house, protect your spouse, protect your ears, protect the voices. Be very particular about the voices who are speaking into your marriage and into your home. Because if you allow the wrong voices to speak, the wrong influences to get in there, it doesn't matter if it comes through a text message or a Facebook message or whatever message. Or a coworker. Or a coworker. I mean, you know, whatever the case is, just be mindful of the hazards and the threats that are there. And man, with everything you've got, protect your marriage. Fight for your marriage and fight for your spouse. So that was just a little side nugget. And
no, I think it's great. You know, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned earlier too, is the little small things that you do in your relationship. And one thing I tell people constantly is that you've got to take care of it daily. You have to, I always say, you got to keep women on simmer if you want them to boil later on. So, but you have to do small things daily, and this helps to do small things daily. I wanted to do this specifically before Christmas because I believe in this book, and I am a big proponent of Adam's work. Because he has another devotional that he's written specifically for law enforcement officers, and he has another one that's going to be coming out in the future. So, but it's not out until January. You said it's
it doesn't officially release until January. Okay,
so how can people get their hands on it right now?
Well, they can go to Facebook, message me there, the official Adam Davis, or they could go to the website, theadamdavis.com. They really need to be in the group that we have. It's only for first responders, their spouses, military couples. If you don't fit those criteria, I'm not letting you in. I mean, I want to have a safe environment for everybody. But you can go to the website, theadamdavis.com. Find me on Facebook, the official Adam Davis, or I think those are about the.
Now, I also know there is a Facebook group for Bulletproof Marriage, but that's the one that's closed, right?
Yes, it's closed, and it's only for first responders and military couples, and the spouses.
So if you want to get your hands on this book, I don't know that you're going to be able to have it before Christmas, but maybe. So you can go to Adam Davis's website, and I always think it's funny that it's the Adam Davis. He's poised for Poised for Greatness is what it is. And so you can go to his website and find it, or you can go to his Facebook page as well and direct message him there.
Hey,
Go ahead.
We should do a marriage conference together. Pull this together. We should do it.
I'm game. I'm game. I've talked about doing it. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And until next time, keep it code 4, guys.